'Tis the season for all things Hallmark movies, and she's one of the most beloved writers to bring her books to the small screen. I'm Julie Lyles-Carr. This is the Modern Motherhood Podcast from All Mom Does, and today I welcome Robin Jones Gunn. Robin, thank you so much for being with me today.
Hello. Thank you for having me on this show.
Well, it's just wonderful to get to hear from you. So tell us about yourself, about your family, where you live. Just get everybody up to date.
Okay. My husband and I live in Hawaii.
Oh, that's terrible. I'm so sorry. You guys, what are we going to do for Robin living in Hawaii?
We've been here about 10 years. We have a son and a daughter who are both grown and married and have kids of their own. We love it here. It's really a privilege to be able to live here and work from home, which I've always done as a writer. I've been writing for over 30 years, and the book that just came out, which is titled Becoming Us, was book number 101.
Wow. Well, like the Dalmatians. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
101 books. That's incredible. You know, I feel kind of snappy because I've got 3 or 4 to my name, but that 101, I feel really behind. Some catching up to do. So tell me about moving to Hawaii. Where had you been living? And then how did you make that decision to go to Hawaii?
We were in the Northwest near Portland, Oregon for 16 years. That's where our kids grew up. We always wanted to come back to Hawaii. We had lived here for a year when our son was in 3rd grade. And it was just this dream. So we made a really hearty investment that failed in 2008, 2009 when the market was going down.
Yes. Oh, yes.
And as a result, we lost everything. We had to sell our house. We were leveled. And we had a lot of friends here in Hawaii because we had, lived here before and kept up with our friends and came to visit every chance we could. And there was this sort of call, why don't you come over here? You're going to start all over again. You can write anywhere. My husband is a counselor. They need counselors in every corner of the world. You're going to rent a little apartment wherever you live. We have little apartments here in Maui. So on faith, truly, we packed up everything, came here, and God has opened doors and has made it so clear this is where we're supposed to be ministering and living. And it's sort of the upside down way that most people would come to Hawaii. You lose everything.
Start over in Maui.
Take a big step of faith.
Wow, that is amazing. And I think the ability to be willing to pivot, because I think for a lot of us, if some significant change comes, so often we're about the business of trying to restore what was.
Yes,
to really have the faith to step out there and say, okay, not to be punny, but new chapter, new book, let's start afresh. What kind of things were you able to tell yourselves in that transition? What gave you the courage to be able to do that? Because I think that would be a very scary thing for a lot of people.
Well, for us, we've been married now 42 years. So having all those years of marriage as a team to understand what it's like when God is leading us and to be able to be in conversations with each other and be in sync, if that makes sense. I know there are a lot of young women that I've spoken with over the years who've said, oh, it's my dream to move to Maui too. I just have to get my husband to agree. And that was such a big part of it that we laid everything out. Hey, we can go be dorm parents in Papua New Guinea. We could go back to Africa. We've lived a life of ministry. Ross was a youth pastor before he went back to school and got a second master's in counseling. So for us, it was just always, we are available, Lord. Where do you want to send us? And are you sure it's Maui? Because that's pretty great. And it was. But I think that there wasn't the fear because we were in sync as a team that this is what we can do together. It wasn't one of us dragging the other along. That's a huge difference in how you make those big life choices. So then, getting here and when things go wrong, we just still look at each other and go, well, it maybe, okay, is God going to move us on to someplace else? We'll go. We're still available. We're not rooted to this earth. It's about his kingdom and what's next and what can we do.
What a beautiful way to live, to just be willing to go and do and see what comes next around the bend. And I have to believe that's given you, that perspective has given you a lot of jet fuel for all of the writing that you do, because you personally are living with such wide open possibilities. And I think that makes its way into your books, this ability to talk about, oh, another possible story and another possible story. And here's another way it could have gone. So take us back to the beginning of your writing career. And by the beginning, I mean, was this something even as a kid that you always dreamed of, or was it something that sort of caught up with you when you were a few years into adulthood? Take us to that place.
I did not ever think I would be a writer. I didn't go to school to learn how to write. When our kids were little, my husband kept pushing me to write articles and devotions because I was always telling stories. And he sent me to my first writers' conference. I was so mad because I felt intimidated, like I was going to be with people that I would be way out of my league, out of my comfort zone. But that first writers' conference changed everything in that I learned the basics and I realized this is something I kind of love to do. So I wrote a very short devotion, sent it off to the Upper Room Devotion magazine, and they bought it for $10. I was a published author. It was so transformational to my way of thinking of what I was capable of doing. And then I started writing more articles and doing some interviews. And then when our children were little, that's when I started writing books for toddlers. I think I wrote 12 books while they were little. And then this turning point came when we were on a youth group trip camping at the beach for a week. And here are these 13-year-old girls, instead of out at the beach with the sand and the surf and the boys, they're in their tent reading. They had brought with them a stack from the library of all these really evocative romance novels. So I crawled in the tent and I started reading along with them. And I was really concerned because I felt like I'm teaching Sunday school every week. And these are not the things I'm teaching you in Sunday school. Does your mother know this is what you're reading?
Right.
No, I don't want you putting these images of love and relationships in your 13-year-old heart. So it was those girls who were relentless in pressing me to write books for them, the kind of love stories they wanted. Just because I'd had books published, with 4 words on a page for toddlers, they thought I could write a whole novel.
Well, it's just the math, Robin. It's like how many pages and how many words times how, yeah. I mean, it's really just a long series of toddler books, right? If you think about it that way.
Yeah, a little bit more than that. But they helped me. That was it. They said, we'll tell you what to write. And it took 2 years, and they told me all their opinions, and I learned so much. And the first Christy Miller book was rejected by 10 traditional publishers. They just kept saying, we don't see a market for books like this. And I'm thinking, go look in the tent. Yeah. Go look in your daughter's bedroom, see what they're reading. So that sort of market had not been established yet when I was submitting the books. But as soon as the first Christy Miller book was published, then they wanted more and more and more. And there became a wider base for YA books in the Christian market. I kept writing about Christy and then Sierra Jensen's series, and then I started writing novels for young women in the Glenbrook series, and then novels for women in midlife, the Sister Chick series, and then I just kept writing about Christy and Todd, the college years, the married years, the baby years, the Father Christmas novels. It just one book led to another until we got to 101.
Wow. And it's really compelling to me that you started from a place, I primarily have written in nonfiction. I do have some fiction things that live on my computer that maybe one day will see the light of day. But from a nonfiction spot, they're always telling us you've got to discover the felt need and address that felt need when you're writing nonfiction. I love in the fiction space, you found a felt need first and developed fiction to meet that need, even when it was something that publishers couldn't see yet. I think that is incredible, because a lot of times in the fiction space, I think we can sometimes start from a place of this need to show creativity and artistry in a story we really want to tell, but we're not coming at it from, does this meet a need that I can see that there's a population that wants this kind of story? It's very, very compelling to hear you describe it that way. I also love that you went and got the heartbeat for what these readers were really looking for, and you were willing to go back to them and have them explain to you what was going on in their hearts and their lives. Because when it comes to women's fiction, I do think it is very, I don't know, is this a fair way to say it? Symptomatic of where we live, if you will, that it really actually tells us a lot about ourselves. What did you learn from this first group of girls, the tent girls? What did you learn from them? And then what did you begin to learn as the fiction that you were writing sort of grew up with them too, as you went more into young adult women and, just in some of those spaces?
I saw that these girls were an unreached people group, in a sense, that they were an underserved group and not represented in literature, not in the Christian circles, or just the average everyday girl. And I discovered that these readers wanted a role model. They love their Anne of Green Gables, and they love, just feeling like the main character could be their best friend. Christy Miller is every girl, so that the readers come to it and it's not this issue-based, let's solve a problem. It's how does an average young teen girl grow up and make choices, and what are the results of those choices, and how does she relate to her friends or who are making other choices. So it's sort of that broader picture of coming of age, but in a gentle and a sort of a story of restoration and redemption as it rolls out, if that makes sense. So
right.
If you would take those concepts and put them into a nonfiction book, which many people have, there'd be great points and great how-to and next step and forgiveness and making good friends and trusting God, all these kind of life skill concepts. When you put it in a novel, you just show, well, this is what it looks like. And then the reader can draw their own conclusion from it. And that's the power of story. I mean, why did Jesus teach us in parables?
Exactly.
He had 3.5 year ministry and he just told stories? Yes.
Right. I mean, that really is so powerful for people to understand, is that Jesus in that way absolutely engaged in the fiction space to teach important truths. And we know now when we look at cognitive science and on, that if you tell someone a story, they're far more apt to remember that story and actually remember the precepts from that story than if you just give them just cold facts without any place to plug those facts, that truth into. So absolutely. Yeah. How do you think things are changing in the market for you? So tell me how many years ago this tent experience was, and then update me to today and some of the issues and challenges you see that may be very much the same as those original girls that you wrote for, or things that now you're realizing are going to have to be addressed and brought to the forefront.
The first book came out in 1988 in the Christy Miller series, and then the rest of the series was written mostly through the 90s and then on. So, and that's kind of extraordinary because I still hear all the time from girls who are 12 years old today who are reading the books. And I ask them, did you notice that Christy doesn't have a cell phone? Mm-hmm. And I think it's going to be an issue. And these readers say, well, have you met Christy's dad? He would never let her have a cell phone. So whatever it is in that suspending our disbelief, that the readers relate to the relationships and the conversations and the life choices in the series rather than the technology and the trends and the way that they interact with each other. What I've seen over the decades in changing is how technology has made us so comfortable to be more closed in, and we don't need other people as much as we used to in those face-to-face relationships. We can do it all through social media. We can stay with our earbuds on in our own quiet corner, and we don't have those experiences of face-to-face, reading body language, having real-time responses back in the whole three-dimensional physical. So those concepts really were sort of weighing on me as I was reading some studies from, there was one from Duke University on the statistics of how in the last 20 years that there's a 30% drop in how many of women invite friends to come over. 30% drop in the just let's get together and let's just talk face to face. And some of the other points on that was that there were, in the last 20 years, again, a 58% drop in women who join clubs. So these chances to get together for face-to-face are becoming more narrow. So when I wrote Becoming Us, it was with that thought of taking these characters. I took Christy Miller and Sierra Jensen. They are now in their 30s. They're both married, have babies. What is it like for women in that space to find friendships and be able to relate to other women their age, whether they're married or not, or have children or not? How do they find ways to gather together and become us, become who they are in the next season of life? So that was the challenge, is to find ways to authentically tell a story of how these fictional characters are drawn to gathering together in a culture where we're more drawn to isolation.
Well, you have absolutely tapped into what I know is a huge felt need in the women that I minister to at my home church. And as a matter of fact, I've just put out a survey to a lot of them asking, all right, we've been doing this and that and the other, and we've studied this and we've had this event and yada, yada. What more would you like to see us be able to do? And I think, Robin, on every response I got, I think this may be right, if not every response and really, really close, it was this idea of just needing a chance to connect with women, wanting more community with women. And one of the interesting things I had to ask myself was, but why are we looking to an institution, if you will, now forgive the phrase, but why are we looking to the church to have to create that community for you? Like what are we missing in our interpersonal lives that we seem to have lost the ability about how to do that for ourselves? Now, if the church can help facilitate that, awesome. But it's very interesting that we're looking to programming and women's ministry leads to create those moments when really it's as simple as asking somebody into your home or being willing to go next door or, wherever those deficits are that you feel like you're not making community, there are places to be able to do that. How did you show that through your characters in this newest book, Becoming Us?
Well, it had to be through the vulnerability of being willing to be known so that they would show up and have this gathering. And I tell it in first person, which is a style of writing for me that allowed that inner dialogue and intimacy. So Emily is the main character, and the book starts where she's been invited to this Christmas kind of gift exchange party, a favorite things party. Emily's standing at the front door, and she just can't bring herself to knock and go in, and she only knows one person, the hostess, and she's terrified. Mm-hmm. Because of that social isolation that has developed in the culture and that fear of being known or not fitting in. And she almost steps away, but she goes in. She finds that these women are just normal. They're very likable, and she feels quite welcomed. But that was a huge step for her to get to that front door and knock. So to show it in the story shows how the women are willing to say, well, this is how I feel. Well, this is what I really think. Because they are more familiar with looking into each other's lives with what women are displaying in visual Instagram and, everything else. So it's like, this is what my life looks like. And to step into someone's life that looks that terrific.
Right.
It's terrifying.
Pretty daunting. Yep.
Yeah. So that you maybe get up the courage to post something when you have one good day and you take a picture of a bouquet of flowers on your table. And then there's someone else who looks at you and says, oh, her husband brings her flowers. My husband just doesn't do that. I can't be friends with her. Just that whole mental craziness. So to break that down and be vulnerable by showing the characters saying, oh, I'm so glad I took that first step, that I was willing to be known. That's the second book that is the sequel is called Being Known. And I take it further where they really go deep. Here's what I'm really thinking, and here's what's really going on in my marriage, and here's what, I really need advice for you to speak into my life. I've come to know you. We've becoming us, but now I'm willing to be known because I got issues, and I trust you to speak into that.
I think that's incredible. And I think it really will make an impact in communities of women who are trying to figure out in this new age where we're so hyper connected, but how to be truly connected at the heart level. That's going to be a really powerful tool. I'm excited to see that next one come out as well. Speak to me on the practical side. I mean, Robin, 101 books. Let's talk about this. Do you sleep? Are you a secret vampire? I mean, what is going on? How do you do this?
Well, so, children's books and gift books and nonfiction books. I've co-authored some books. I wrote Spoken For with Elizabeth Key, and Praying for Your Future Husband I wrote with Tricia Goyer. So, I'm not diminishing it. My usual pattern is 3 books a year, and, you write for over 35 years, and suddenly it just adds up. But it hasn't felt at all like I was on this. I mean, probably because I never set out to be a writer. So it isn't as if I was trying to reach a goal. Right. It's just taking what comes next and being in that moment and being in the flow and listening to the world around and writing into the book that I'm working on, whatever I'm dealing with or whatever's going on with my kids or around me, like to fictionalize that is sort of just a flow. Right. And that makes it a lot different. And see, I feel that fiction is a completely different place in your head than you probably have discovered this as you've been working on yours and looking at what you have in your files. Because with nonfiction, you really have to have it outlined and those chapters figured out, and you need your key points. And it just sort of draws from a different place inside you.
Right.
And so what I've mostly written is fiction, and that's more of a just get on the raft and float down the river and pick up what you see
where it goes. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's just incredible. And I do want to mention that in addition to all of these fiction works, you do have nonfiction, Praying for Your Future Husband that you mentioned with Tricia Goyer. We got her as a guest on the show, Spoken For with Elizabeth Key. I was just at a conference just a couple months ago in Portland with Jeff, her husband, and spoke with him. We both spoke on the same platform. He's great. I didn't have a chance to meet her, but that's a great one for readers to check out. And then Victim of Grace is another one that you have. Part of what I love in your career arc is that you started by doing things that weren't quite as daunting. And I think that's beautiful. That first article that you got sold, the toddler books, it gave you this really beautiful on-ramp, because I think sometimes we arrive at a goal and it's just, I'm going to sit down and write my first book and it's got to be New York Times, or I'm going to start this business and I've got to be this level of distributor or salesperson or whatever by this point. And sometimes those things can kind of shoot us in the foot because we aren't willing to embrace the small beginnings. What do you see now at book 101, looking all the way back, that you're thankful for in those smaller beginnings?
That's so beautifully said, Julie, because there's such a path of humility when you're willing to do the small things and be faithful in the little things and take the steps so that you are gathering all the pieces you need in order to work on whatever's next. So I see a lot of challenges with the generation that my kids are in now because the expectations are so high. If you're going to do this, you better succeed within 3 months or else you're a failure. Right. Instead of, well, where's the apprenticing years? Where are the failures? Because that's part of being an entrepreneur, definitely. Where are the valuable lessons that you simply took a risk, and that in and of itself was the victory, because it allowed you to learn so much so that you could take the next step. I have books. I wrote an entire novel in the Glenbrook series, turned it in, and my editor said, "You can do better. You can do better. Start over." And at the time, I had just had a hysterectomy. My dad was in the hospital. I was like, it's a miracle I even got the book finished, and you're telling me I can do better? That book has never been published because my editor was right. I could do better. But I had to step out of the process and let my body heal, and be with my dad on his journey to heaven, and just let life happen. I came back and wrote the book to replace that one, and it won several awards, including a Christie Award for Excellence in Fiction, because it came out of the stuff of life that was going on around me, and I couldn't be on the fast track to get it done when there wasn't in me what was needed to be pulled out to tell the story. So I would love to see the young entrepreneurs allowing themselves that space and those margins so that life can be, and death and loss and gain and experience can all be brought into the mix, so that they bring to their art, to their work, this truth that comes out of real experience, real life. Because if it comes from that depth in your heart, it will touch the reader at that same level.
Absolutely. I think that's such an important thing to note, because we are gathering things along the way to share, but in this world that can seem very accelerated, or in a world that, I believe in measuring results. I believe in seeing if you're making some footing, but sometimes our expectation about how fast that footing should go can be very misleading to us. I think it's really important for our listeners to hear again, particularly those who have just become familiar with you recently because of the Hallmark movies and the Father Christmas series that's being so celebrated and now on the screen, which is so exciting. But again, that first book was published in 1988. So we're talking 28 years later, you actually begin to see these stories that you've been telling and have been in your heart realized on the screen. Tell us how all of that came to be, the Hallmark experience and getting to see your work unfolded with live actors.
Oh, Julie, it was the best.
Yeah.
It really was. And I have a lot of friends that have had, not a lot, but I have some friends that have had their books made into movies, and their experiences weren't as wonderful as mine was. But I loved the people I worked with. I'm still working with them with some ideas for other projects. And my agent has been with me on the journey. So when the first call came to my agent that the producer was interested in the first Finding Father Christmas book, it was 5 years from that first call to when it was finally ready to go into production.
Right. So another long time, lead time, yeah.
Roller coaster, yeah. So my agent had written into the contract that we could be invited to go on set, which is not typical, but she got that in the contract. So when they started filming that first movie, she and I flew to Vancouver, BC, where they do all the Hallmark filming. And for 3 days, that's all that you're allowed by Canadian law to be on set. For 3 days, we were part of it. We got to be extras.
That's so in the fun.
Theater. Yeah, but that was a whole other experience. Talk about an unreached people group, or just a whole industry where we were, both my agent and I love the Lord, and we were so open about, well, okay, we're praying for you guys, and good to see you, and it was such a we were so aware that we were the minority, and yet all the questions of where the stories I write go to this deeper place, and that's what the viewers respond to in the movies. So what is that, and how can we get more of those stories into Hallmark and other places because that's what the viewers respond to. So I don't know, it's kind of a mix of the whole experience. Being able to see the story come to life was just kind of the bonus of it. What I loved was being in that mix with the producers and the actors. I still text back and forth with several of the actors and have gone to dinner with them and been able to just have these really sweet developing relationships with them. That excited me more than anything else. And then second movie, we got to go on set again, and third movie on set again. So it was like a reunion every time we showed up. Hugs and, just so excited to be able to create art together.
So fun. So fun to get to see that come to realization for you. I'm curious to hear your perspective. I am fascinated in a world where, let's face it, a lot of the optics and entertainment that's out there is not of, how do we say this? It's not of a Hallmark vein. Is that fair? I mean, just, it's not sort of that sentimental and kind and compassionate kind of entertainment, the stuff that we see, a lot of different places. And so if I were just coldly in the entertainment vein, it would have never dawned on me to have gone and said, let's go find some stories that just have a whole lot of heart and are just some good, clean fun. And let's see if we can put some movies and some money around that. And let's just see what happens. And of course, now we know that these films that Hallmark is putting out, it is just snowballed. It's unbelievable, the machine that it has become and how incredibly embraced and well received it has been by viewers and advertisers. So what do you think? What is your perspective on why in a generation that so much entertainment does not match what's going on the Hallmark Channel and all the Christmas movies that have become so popular and all of that, why do you think consumers are drawn to it?
I think the obvious answer is it's closer to where most people live. It feels more comforting and soothing to have a family Christmas where you're reunited with family members, or there's love blooming in the midst of, so those sort of heartwarming life moments are soothing to us and encouraging to us. I don't really understand the process of how these more heartwarming stories are discovered and then get into production. That's still something I don't fully understand, but I know that it's been all uphill for the producers. They're independent producers, so they can create content for any streamer like Amazon or Netflix, or they can create content for network television. So their choice is to find the stories, create the content by hiring a screenwriter, and then be able to sell that to the network or the streamer. And it's a lot of steps to get to where that middle person being able to convince the one with the money that you have an audience for this.
Absolutely. And I think that's what's so profound to me, is that there are people who've been willing to take that risk and pitch for this, that they're seeing something in the market that they're saying, I really think this can work. And they've been right. It's pretty phenomenal when you look at the numbers, how well the Hallmark Channel is repositioning itself in this way, both with all the Christmas series, but then also throughout the year, a lot of other films that have to do with certain other holidays and that kind of thing, how much it has caught speed. And I think it's a really fascinating commentary on our culture, that there is still room and desire for this. And I think you're tapped into something. I do think that people are probably more apt and open with that Christmas message. There is something in our culture that still leaves that wide open, that still is very receptive to the ideas of home and hearth and family and reconciliation and reunion, all surrounding the holidays. So you're a smart one, Robin. You tapped in even when you probably didn't realize you tapped in years ago when you started putting together the Father Christmas series, but it's speaking right now into a generation that really desires it. That's incredible.
Of course, I had no idea. I just wrote the story that was on my heart. And here's the thing with the those who are being able to get these stories into Hallmark and other places and like you said, taking that risk, I feel such a camaraderie, because that's what happened 30 years ago when I had all the rejections on Christy Miller. We just don't see a market. And to be in that position, say, no, I know there's a market. Let me just get this out and let's see what the numbers say. And the first Finding Father Christmas movie broke the record for the network for the most watched and highest rated Christmas movie in 2016. And I was at Costco about 2 weeks after it aired, and my husband's loading the paper towels in the back of the car, and my phone buzzed, and I looked, and I had a text message from the president of Hallmark. Oh. And he said, here's the statistics. We wanted you to know we want to do more.
Wow.
There it is. Like, yeah. Who gets a message from the president of Hallmark in the Costco parking lot? It's because the story touched a heart. And those who are now creating art, they want to be a writer, they want to, develop this production. It has to come from life, and it has to be authentic, and it has to speak truth in a really true way. Otherwise, it won't stand the test. It won't open the opportunity for a sequel and a sequel. You have to go deep when you create your art in order to really have that sustainability.
That's beautiful. Who gets a phone call from or a text in the Costco parking lot from the president? It's Robin. Robin gets that. It's amazing. Well, Robin, I can't thank you enough for sharing your heart, your insight, your savvy, your creativity, and just this beautiful spirit that you have in wanting to serve the Lord and serve Him through the words and the stories and teach truth in that way. Thank you so much. And we just wish you all the best. I know there are lots of exciting things on the horizon.
Julie, thank you. You are a delight.
Oh, thank you. Head over to the show notes for links and more content from the episode today. And while you're on the interwebs, be sure and check out All Mom Does, an amazing resource and community for the season of life you're in. Come say hi to me on the socials. I particularly hang out on Instagram, and I'm Julie Lyles Carr there. It's so great to get to connect with you on the grams. I just love it when I get to hear from you about your favorite episodes and what's going on in your life and who you'd like to see as a guest. So head to the grams and say hi. A big thank you to Rebecca, our content coordinator, and Donna, our producer. I'm so blessed to work with these amazing women who get the episodes out each week. Be sure and subscribe and share and leave a 5-star rating and review. That's the best thanks you can give our team. It helps get the word out about the podcast. I'll see you next time on the Modern Motherhood Podcast.